The SNES Classic Edition is finally here, packing some of the best games of all time into a wonderfully nostalgic little package. But while the SNES Classic is big on old school fun, it also brings back a lot of old school problems. Like the NES Classic before it, the SNES Classic is a faithful miniature recreation of one of Nintendo's most iconic consoles. A lot of the classic design components are still there, including the sliding power and reset buttons, and they are complemented by some modern conventions, like an HDMI port for your TV and a micro USB port for power. Naturally, the cartridge slot doesn't do anything because the games are preloaded. Moving on to the controllers, these are even more true to the original. Every detail of the classic SNES controller is here, from the rubbery select and start buttons to the concave X and Y buttons, and of course the convex A and B buttons. As soon as I held it, I instantly felt like I was a little kid playing my SNES again, so kudos to Nintendo for that. That being said, there are some issues with the design. First problem, the cables are still way too short. The SNES Classic cables are about 5 feet. That's 2 feet longer than what you got on the NES Classic, but it's still not nearly long enough. And on top of that, you can only access the console's home menu by pressing the reset button on the system. So you're going to be getting up a lot as you switch games. While the SNES Classic's hardware has some quirks, its 21 game library is almost universally stellar. Games like Super Mario World, Donkey Kong Country, and The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past are just as much fun today as they were 20 years ago. And from multiplayer games like Street Fighter II to engrossing RPGs like Final Fantasy III, there's truly something for everyone. There are some games that don't quite hold up, such as Super Mario Kart and Star Fox, the latter of which really pushed the SNES back in the day, but overall everything looks and plays fantastic. And I'd be remiss not to mention Star Fox 2, which is launching exclusively on the SNES Classic. It's a fascinating game filled with ambitious ideas, and while you really could tell it was pushing the limits of what the SNES is capable of, it's an awesome piece of Nintendo history that's definitely worth checking out. The SNES Classic also packs a host of fun extra features, including a variety of display modes, and a handful of really neat borders that add some pizzazz around the game screen. There's also a new rewind feature, which lets you go back about a minute in any of your saved games. It's really good for those challenging boss fights. Rewind is a little bit clunkier than I would have liked, but it is a nice feature to have. At just $80, the SNES Classic Edition is an excellent value for anyone who wants to relive some of the very best games of the 90s. The system's 21 titles are a joy to play, even if you have to deal with some old school problems in order to enjoy them. But the SNES Classic is still a great buy for nostalgic gamers, if you manage to get your hands on one, that is. And for more on the SNES Classic and everything gaming, keep it locked to Tom's Guide.